Hi, I'm Nicholas Wallwork, and I'm joined today by Tom Gillett, our project manager on this amazing site in Fleet in Hampshire. This is one of our clients' site that I'm mentoring throughout the process of a commercial to resi conversion. It's one of the largest being documented in the UK at the moment at 30,000 square feet. It's an exciting build. Check out the channel, subscribe, hit the bell icon to get notified of more videos. You can follow the journey of this conversion on the channel as well. Today we're going to be talking about the types of contract to use for your builder. Tom's highly experienced in delivering sites of any size, and it's appropriate to choose the right kind of contract for the right kind of builder, the right kind of site. So, Tom, as we walk around the site today, can you tell me about, talk about with this site, what was an appropriate size contract for a 30,000 square foot commercial to resi conversion, for example, and what are the kind of contracts that we might use for different sites?
I think the temptation to assume that the value of a development will dictate the contract is probably not quite the right way to go about things. What you have to look at is the risk. If you're building a major site, albeit floor, four walls and a roof in the middle of a field, then quite clearly the risk of doing that job is slightly less involved than might otherwise be the case if you're trying to build something in the middle of the high street where you've got restrictions on the hours of working. It's heavily populated, you've got party wall issues, front, back and sides, the building may be a listed building, so there's all sorts of facets to the development which have to be considered when choosing the contract. And the reason I say this is because the type of contracts that one would adopt within the JCT suite of contracts, which is generally recognised as the industry standards, come really in three forms: minor, intermediate and major. And depending on the complexity of the project, one of those contracts should suffice. There is also a home builder's contract, which is a very simplistic contract, but unless you're building nothing more than a granny annex, I wouldn't really engage. But for a commercial project for a development, then I would seriously recommend that you use the JCT contract. And any professional builder who is not prepared to utilise one of these contracts, you should walk away from.
It's a good sign right from the off. If they don't want to sign a proper contract, move on.
Well, the JCT suite of contracts, or contracts were designed decades ago, and although they're brought up to date on a regular basis, called the Joint Contracts Preview, extensively were brought together by construction lawyers, construction professionals, construction and building companies, and the suite of contracts are there in order to protect both parties, not just the builder. And this is one of the problems that people fall into. Where we have gone to sites and there have been some problems, the job's late, it's over budget, it's not to the quality or standard, the first thing we ask for is, can we have a look at the contract? And some of the most articulate and capable people,
here's the back of my fag packet,
who in normal life are considered, professionals in their own walk of life,
suddenly
will present me with something, as you quite rightly said, no better than a fag pack. But invariably, it's the terms and conditions which the builder has placed.
And it's under his terms.
Yes.
They've happily signed it.
On which one can drive a coach and horses through, because of course the onus is to protect the builder, and it leaves the employer exposed. In the case of the JCT contracts, there's some variations, but in the role that we are adopted as contract administrators, and what that basically means is that I have to behave fair and reasonably in administering the contract. So already the builder has an element of protection, because of course
it's a fair contract.
It's a fair contract, and I have to make sure
it's
that it's managed fairly. There is absolutely no point if an employer does not pay the builder for the work in accordance with the terms, because the builder will then be perfectly entitled to raise that and to stop the work.
So actually builders shouldn't be, sorry to interrupt, but builders shouldn't be afraid of working with people that want these contracts.
They should.
The contracts are fair.
Exactly.
And everything we do in our business is fair. You want a win-win relationship. And
exactly.
If you're going to cultivate a win-win relationship with your developer and with your construction company, the contract should reflect that, should reflect the intentions of the people behind it. So actually, contracts aren't to be feared, they're to be there.
And there are mechanisms within the contract should occasionally incidents occur, whether it's bad weather, global pandemics, or unforeseen, all of which can be managed. Now, most decent building contractors will be fully aware of all these. They'll also be fully aware of the reasons they can claim for additional time, or additional expenses, which is not always the case when they are dealing with people under their own terms and conditions of contract.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I would encourage developers and people entering the business to utilise these contracts, because they give you a lot of protection, they're fair, they're well established, and in the court of law it's very, very easy to prove when one side is behaving unreasonably and therefore where any fault may lie should any difficulties occur. However, long before that, there's mechanisms in it which, if you have a contract administrator, then obviously these matters can be discussed and resolved very quickly by just referring to the contract. In the ideal world, of course, everybody knows what the job's involved, how much it's going to be, how long it should take, and you don't need to refer back to the contract because the relationship is so solid that
should stay in the drawer unless there's a problem, ideally. But it sets the tone for the relationship, it sets the tone for everything that's been discussed and agreed, and once that goes in the drawer, hopefully it's never taken out, really.
Sure. Now, there are different forms of contract, clearly. Those which are more traditional, where as an employer you've appointed some consultants to do much of the design work, but equally you may choose to go down the design and build route, where the onus is more on the contractor to carry out much of the design work, and in that case somebody like myself would not have a role of contract administrator, but probably be appointed on an employer's agent position. There's some quite distinct subtleties and differences to my role and responsibility,
depending on the contract in use.
Indeed.
Yeah.
But again, it's clearly defined, and as long as people stick to the terms of the contract, then there's no problem.
But I don't think we'll get into too much detail now on necessarily which contract is right for which scenario, but needless to say, your experience and our experience as developers and mentoring people in property, getting going in property, will help you as a client choose the kind of contract you should be using. I think thanks today for your advice, Tom, and insight into the different kind of contracts out there. It's a big field. I think people looking to get into property, or certainly maybe existing investors looking to get into larger scale deals like this huge commercial to resi scheme Tom and I are delivering for the client at the moment. The devil is in the detail. There's multiple different contracts, multiple different appointments, tens of consultants all feeding into that process that need to be documented, appointed, and all that pre-work put in to be able to deliver a site of this size on time and on budget, with as little mistakes as possible. And mistakes do happen, but it's about how you overcome those and having the right people on your team to overcome them. So if you've enjoyed watching this video and want to follow more interesting videos about property development, please hit the subscribe button around this video, hit the bell icon to be notified of new videos. If you'd like to know more about my mentorship, if you'd like me to deliver a site like this for you, please also get in touch. There'll be links in the comments. Look forward to seeing you on another video soon, and good luck with your property development journey.